Congress left town last week with a long list of items to address when they return, including a possible health care agreement, plus additional appropriations bills. And in the backdrop, of course, the 2026 midterm elections. Tonight we have more from my interview with Senate Majority Leader John Thune about the 2026 congressional agenda and the Republican strategy for next year's midterms. Let me ask you about next year. Currently, the Senate balance of power, 53-47. You have GOP senators not seeking re-election: Mitch McConnell, Joni Ernst, Thom Tillis, Tommy Tuberville. You have Democrats not seeking re-election as well, 4 of them. Where do you look at the map as you head into 2026, considering what you're projecting, but as you look at the map for the Senate, how do you see it?
Well, I feel good about where we are. I mean, obviously, we've had some retirements, but we've got really good candidates in some of those states. Our incumbents who are running for re-election are strong incumbents. They're veterans. They know how to win campaigns. And we've got some open seats that present an opportunity for us to pick up a seat or two. So now it's a midterm election. Typically, there are headwinds in a midterm election. But I think, like I said, when a lot of the effects of some of the things that we've done start playing out in front of the American people, they're going to say this is a team we want to keep in place. President Trump obviously will be very important to getting voters out. His voters come out to support him, sometimes don't come out in a midterm election, so he'll be key to ensuring that we have strong turnout.
But you think it might be tight majorities if Republicans do win?
It could be. I mean, you know, obviously the House is certainly incredibly tight already, and ours is a fairly tight majority as well. And but how these, you know, some of these open seats, North Carolina is a really good example. Will be a very expensive race, but if we do well in North Carolina, we're going to do well across the country.
When you look at the policies that came out of everything you all passed up here on Capitol Hill, of everything the president did in executive orders, there's a lot of Republicans who look at that and say, we're on board. Policy. When things are talked about how the president talks about different things, sometimes it doesn't sit well with some members of the Republican caucus or independents, definitely not Democrats. How do you deal with that? How do you characterize that? You've dealt with, obviously, President Trump for many years.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're different styles. I think it's safe to say. The president has his own way of communicating, and it's been very successful and effective for him. The people in the middle, those independents that are what I call the middle of the electorate, which decides elections, especially some of these competitive elections in states where you've got, you know, it's sort of, we don't call them purple states, whatever you want to call them. Sometimes how you say things matters. And obviously, I think as we get into this election year, I expect the president to be out on the trail and communicating in a way that is winsome, not just to our Republican base, the people who already love him, but also to the middle of the electorate, the people that we're trying to win over. And I think the best way to win them over is with his policies, which I think are going to make big differences in their lives.
When you look at the polls about congressional performance, they are really upside down.
Right.
And it's often like that. People don't get a sense of everything that's happening up here. But how do you change 36% approval?
Well, I mean, I think that part of it is putting up a record of accomplishment and then getting out and talking about it. The one thing that I don't think we've done effectively yet, and we will because this is an election year coming up in 2026, is get out there and talk about the things we've done. And as I said, as the message gets out there and people start feeling in their pocketbooks the impact of a lot of these policies, I think most people are what I would call pocketbook voters. They're kitchen table, you know, just bread and butter type issues that they care about. And I think you're going to start seeing the impact of the things that we've done in their daily lives. I think that'll start moving people in our direction when it comes to choice, the contrast between us and the Democrats. But how do you make us more likable? I mean, you know, it's been said that Congress, when you get down to where we are now, it's kind of paid staff and blood relatives, and that might be about the size of it. But I think part of it, too, is we're coming off a 43-day government shutdown.
Right.
Nobody benefited from that. And everybody looks at Congress, both sides, Republican and Democrat, says, why can't you guys figure this out? Now, in my view, they should be blaming the Democrats because they're the ones who shut the government down for 43 days. But the fact is the American people look at Congress and I think it's a pox on all of us. So I think that's perhaps had some impact on these ratings that you're seeing. And it's up to us to try and change that by getting out and putting up a record of accomplishment. Yeah.
Here's what you said about the government shutdown September when we talked.
We are Republicans united, House Republicans, Senate Republicans, President Trump, The House Republicans have passed a short-term funding resolution that is clean, nonpartisan, and came over to the Senate. It's sitting at the desk in the Senate. In Chuck Schumer's universe, we didn't do appropriations bills. It was all written behind closed doors in his office. And now he's upset because he isn't being consulted on everything, because we're doing things the way we should be doing them, allowing Republican senators and Democrat senators to work together to pass these bills.
It sounded optimistic then, obviously went into 43 days
Right.
of this shutdown.
Yeah.
Are we going to finish this cycle of going up against a fiscal cliff? Are we eventually going to see Congress go back to so-called regular order?
I hope so, and I had a conversation with Senator Schumer earlier today on that very subject, because we are up against another funding deadline. I don't think anybody wins in a government shutdown. I think shutdowns are stupid, and I think that's a view that President Trump shares as well. And it's why it was so unfortunate. But I think what the Democrats discovered, because we've been through this a couple of times since I've been here and on our side, is that it's a lot easier to get into a government shutdown than it is to get out of it. And so when they slid into this thing, and then all their special interest groups on the far left were cheering them on, and it becomes a lot harder. Frankly, it's good that there were a handful of Democrats who had the good sense to say, we need to end this. And fortunately we did, but it lasted way too long. But when it comes to funding the government, those are basic things that the American people expect that we ought to be able to do, and we ought to be able to work together. And I'm hopeful that's going to be the case.
Been in this job for a little while now. If you had a Christmas wish when it comes to Capitol Hill, what would it be?
You know, I'm somebody who's very purpose-driven, and I want to see people who are working here, serving here, and a ton of people who work here who are very purpose-driven and willing to serve causes that are greater than themselves. And you know, that to me is making this a better place for future generations, for our kids and grandkids, and that means we have to work together, which is hard. This is a very polarized environment, and the hostility that some folks on the other side of the aisle have toward this president is unlike anything I've seen in American politics, certainly in my lifetime. But it's sometime you have to pull together and understand that we are in this together, and we're going to have big differences of opinion. No doubt about that. We'll litigate that at the ballot box in 2026, but after that's over, particularly when it comes to issues of national security and the betterment of the American people, we ought to be looking for ways to get together and work to achieve some things that really matter for our country.
Senator, thank you.
Thanks, Brett.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.